Hey, everybody. We have a very special week for you, and it actually speaks to our own pain. I think we should call
You're
this
always
week.
picking on me.
I think we should call this week Growing Up and Going Away.
And letting go.
Letting go.
I feel like you pick on me a lot on this podcast.
I wonder, we should take a poll. Do the people listening think I pick on you, or did they think you pick on me?
It's a good question. But notice that I am what's the word?
Material.
Yeah, I'm the material that you use a lot. So if I pick on you, it's because of that.
I think everybody in my life has been the material.
I know. How come you're not the
To
material?
my mom, if you read, your brain is always listening. There's all sorts of crazy bad things about me in that book. But anyways, welcome to the Brain Warriors Way podcast. We're going to talk about normal development and the big tasks of adolescence are identity and independence.
Mhm.
So I want to make my own decisions. And who am I? Separate from you. And that's normal. And I think God created it that way so that when these children we love so dearly go away, that we don't miss them that much.
Well, my child came out of the womb, like with her hands on her hips at 2.5 years old and said, "I'm the leader, I'm the boss." I knew there was always going to be this, like, she was never just going to do what I said. So that was not going to happen. Like, I had this illusion.
Where does that come from?
I don't know. But I had this illusion that I was going to have a baby. I was going to like be this great mother. I was going to tell her what to do. She was going to do what I said, and it was all going to be good. Did not happen that way. I'm the leader. I'm the boss. And she was just so stubborn. So I knew she wasn't just going to do everything I said. But you can't be a trauma nurse and work in a trauma unit and not be protective. So I know where you're going with this, the letting go part. I know where you're going with this. But it's not that I don't want to let go. It's just I need to protect her. I mean, yes, I'm having a hard time letting her go because she's like one of my best friends. But besides you two are my only like best friends. So, but you can't see what I saw.
It's not quite that pathetic. You have other friends that adore you and that you spend time with. It's not quite that pathetic.
Sort of. But you can't see what I saw. Well, I knew it was like I had to start letting go a little bit when she was going to preschool and they told me you have to leave because she won't climb the ladder to the slide because she's like, "It's dangerous, mommy. It's dangerous."
And so from a neuropsychiatrist that sees traumatic brain injury as the number one cause for many people of mental health issues, and a neurosurgical ICU nurse who
trauma nurse
saw people who saw their physical brains because they had skull fractures. What you do as a job clearly impacts how you parent. And now that what Chloe's doing is normal, as she normally pulls away, what are the best strategies for you when you have children that go through normal stages of development? Is it helpful to cling?
I'm not clinging. I'm protecting.
Is it helpful to cling? Protect. Some, I don't know who might say overprotect. So what's the right balance?
Okay, but I have to defend myself here.
No, I'm not attacking you. I'm asking you because you learned parenting with love and logic
and
early.
It was so helpful.
And parenting with love and logic means by the time they get to 17, if you've been doing this for 10 years, which you have, she's already responsible.
Oh, she is.
She's already capable of being on her own.
So I have no doubt.
You have to deal with your own sadness.
But let's separate a couple things. I have no doubt my daughter can live on her own and take care of herself now. I actually have no doubt. I'm comfortable with the idea that she's going to go away to college. I'm sad for me. What I'm still struggling with is the actual, this is what I told her. Like, when you use love and logic, it's really helpful for letting go of control of certain things. So kids are at this age where they make adult consequences. They turn 13, they're not with their parents all the time. They make adult decisions, which means they have to pay adult consequences if they make bad decisions, but they're not adults yet. So things like pregnancy, right, exactly, STDs, car accidents, drinking and driving, these are things that we can't protect them from. And they're going to make those decisions, either they're going to make good decisions or bad decisions. So those are things that I really spent a lot of time like honing in and teaching her. It's like, I can't control the things you do. I know, I'm aware of that.
But when parents help children make these decisions, it's mixed with excitement.
Mm-hmm. I'm very proud.
It's mixed with remembering what it was like for us. Although when I was 18, I went into the Army.
I wasn't doing anything like what she's doing. I was like not nearly as responsible.
Right. So I've actually seen a lot of patients over the years that got depressed when their kids went away.
Oh, I started getting depressed a year and a half ago.
It's a loss. And so the important thing is to understand its brain development, that, wanting to separate is normal, but having enough supervision, especially with vulnerable kids, is really important.
So one thing that helped me, I started to get really depressed about a year and a half ago, because she was like, we were attached at the hip. Mommy, you're my best friend. I hope you live to be 110 because I never want to leave you. I'm never going to college away. Like, I'm going to be as close to home as I can be, like all of this stuff. Right. And then all of a sudden she turned 16 and that just went out the window. She wanted to be gone. She didn't want to be close to me. She still liked me. We were still friends. But she was very independent all of a sudden. And I was devastated. And I'm like, wait, what happened? Do you want to be with me until you're old? Like, that just went out the window. And you kept reminding me it was normal. But I was so sad because all of a sudden she was independent. So I got a head start on it. But what helped was I went and I actually did some Emdr therapy over it because I was actually really sad. It's like I knew it was normal. I didn't want to stunt her growth because of my own issues, I suppose. But I went and did some EMDR because I'm like, why am I so sad over something that's so normal? Like, I was really like just not good in a good place. And it really helped me. The EMDR really helped because when I was able to replace those negative thoughts with like, oh, she's leaving me. Oh, I'm so sad. Oh, it's like I realized it was sort of all about me. And I replaced it with how proud I am of her and how excited I am for her. And then I also filled that gap with all the fun things I'm going to start doing. So, and then I'm going to spend time with you and I'm going to go do some of the hiking trips I've always wanted to do if things ever open up and, all of these things. So
and back to karate.
Right. Back to the things that I've sort of set aside. And because my life became about being a mom.
You'll have a little bit more space. So the big point of this is there's normal development. Now, she's one of those kids where if she goes off to school in another state, she's responsible enough and has that history where she does well in school because it's hers to do, not because we have to supervise. There are other kids when they turn 18, well, emotionally, they're sort of 16. And it's critical because their brain is actually not finished developing till they're 25 or 6 or 7, somewhere around there. It's critical to have enough supervision to keep them safe. And it's an independent decision. When we come back, we're going to talk more about the art of letting go. Did you learn anything? Write it down. Take a picture of it. Post it on any of your social media sites. Go to Brain Warriors Way podcast, leave us a comment, question, or a review. If we read it, we're going to read some coming up. We'll enter you into a drawing to win a copy of Tana's new book, The Relentless Courage of a Scared Child, or my new book, Your Brain is Always Listening. Stay with us.
Welcome back. We are in the week of letting go. If you've got children who are about to fly the nest, or even something else in your life where it's time to let go of something and you're struggling a little bit. And in this episode, we're going to talk about the consequences of not letting go. So if you're struggling with letting go, we want you to start thinking about, well, what's the flip side of that? What are the consequences if you don't let go?
And before we do, we have a review to read from Angel.Joe. So glad. I'm so thankful I found this podcast. I really wish I had the ability to go to one of the clinics. I've suffered so much with mental illness, quote, for as long as I can remember. Medication after medication after medication, provider after provider, suicidal ideation, different diagnosis. I feel like I have no emotion being on medication. I look forward to listening to the entire series and reading your books and hopefully finding a way out for me. Not sure if it will be possible to come off these medications or if I can find a good psychiatrist in my area. But now I have hope.
Hope is a big thing. I
love that.
Yeah.
Because hope is so important. And in my book, The End of Mental Illness, it's like these are mental, they're brain. If they can unlock why your brain is struggling, then you're just more likely to feel better. And people don't understand that about medication. Medication can decrease depression, but it tends to decrease all feelings. So Angel Joe, thank you so much.
Awesome. So I want to talk about the consequences of not letting go. I think this was one of the things that helped me to start to realize it's time to let go, because the consequences of not letting go is really enabling your kids. It's handicapping them. And it's also sort of, you have to take care of them, right? So you sort of enable them. And when I realized that, I read something when I was studying Love and Logic, is that entitled people can never be happy. And that's what happens, is you unwittingly, unintentionally sort of make them entitled and enabled. And so the college scandal was a perfect example of this. These are parents who became so wrapped up in, first of all, their kids became their identity, their success became their identity. But it's like,
and it wasn't really about the kids.
No. And so, but it's like thinking that their kids can't do this on their own, or their success isn't their own. Like, you want your kids to be able to, whatever success they achieve is their own. And so if you don't do that, then you get so wrapped up in it. And now that's an extreme example, but it happens, and it happens a lot. You're constantly rescuing them.
And by helping them take responsibility, by not rescuing them, you're actually elevating their sense of confidence, of competence, and self-esteem. So we watched, I guess it was on Netflix, about the college admission scandal. It's just horrifying. Terrible. But what you saw is the parents didn't have confidence in their children. And it really became about them.
What are my friends going to think?
And they have to go to this school or that school. And the thing I took away from it, that the word prestige, right? If you didn't go to one of these prestigious universities, the word prestige actually comes from a French word that means deceit.
Isn't that interesting?
And I'm sensitive to this. When I turned 18, I went into the military. I got a year of college done while I was in Europe serving in the military at the University of Maryland. They had an extension campus. And then I came back and did a year at a community college, Orange Coast College.
So did I. 2 years.
Went to a small Christian college.
So did I.
Vanguard University. And I don't think that impaired me at all. It's not where you go to school that matters.
What you do with it.
Who you are and what you do with the education that you get. So at this point, children are being rejected from Duke and Harvard and Princeton.
But to find out that your parents did that, and I heard some of the conversations, if you listen to some of the phone conversations of the parents talking about their children, that is so devastating if you're the child to hear that you think your kid's not smart enough to get into some of these schools. It's like, well, first of all, so what if they get into another school and it's not Harvard? Like, so what? Why would you not be proud? I was just mind blown.
Root for them, for the reality of them.
Right.
And when you cheat to get them ahead, you teach them to cheat.
So what really helped me was when Chloe was in second grade and I was really struggling. I mean, she was just such a strong-willed child, and I learned love and logic. And the one line that really helped me was, "You've already done school. This is not about you. This is about them learning, not about you learning. Let it be theirs." And so it just, for some reason, that just really struck me.
And it starts early, from there in second grade, and they have a project to do. And
you're doing it for them. And
the mother or father steps in and does it for them. What you're teaching them is they are not competent.
Right.
And so
I backed out completely.
Getting back to the theme of letting go.
But if you start letting go young, it's not easy to watch your kids fall and scrape their knees and make mistakes. But trust me, it's much easier to watch them do that when they're in second grade, when they're 10, 12, 15, than when they're 25, 30, 40. So much better to let them learn those mistakes when they're young. And I remember, so I adopted the practice of, I don't take sweaters to school. If you forget them, you'll be cold. Maybe you have to stay inside for recess. I don't take lunches to school. I don't take school projects. I don't take homework. I don't do your homework. If you have a question, you can help me. If you don't turn your homework in, you'll make friends next.
If you have a question, I will help you. Not you can help.
Oh yeah, I will help you. If you have a question, I will help you. But these are things that I adopted, and I had to learn them. They were not easy to learn, and they made a huge difference in the type of kid that I have now versus the type of kid I was going to have.
So before we close, letting go. I think it's critical to really ask yourself, am I doing this for me, or am I doing that for them? And from a parenting standpoint, not enabling your kids to not be successful, but to root for them and to let it be on them unless they're doing dangerous
So the one thing I want to ask you is, because you see a lot of these kids, what have you seen with parents who sort of like put the responsibility and the onus on the kids versus parents who try to fix everything for their kids? When they run into even a mental health issue, who tends to do better?
When it's the child's idea to get help, it's much better. When it becomes a requirement of the parents, kids often are not cooperative. They don't get as much out of it. So I think being a good listener, I can't say this more. I was working with one of my patients yesterday, and they were an adult couple, and the man said something, and rather than the wife just repeating it so he could hear what he was saying and talk himself through it, she finished it as she would finish it. Well, how can you do that? And that's not going to work. And I mean, completely, it's just filled with direction, judgment, and caused him to get angry. And I'm like, if you just would have stopped at, you think your life depends on it, and then don't say anything else, he would have talked himself through it. So the most important thing you can do, your kids, your spouse, is be a good listener.
But we're
Too
not taught
often,
this.
the anxiety that you have, somebody says something, you don't let them finish what they're going to say, and then you just have verbal diarrhea all over them. And it doesn't keep the conversation going. And we want our teenagers especially to have the mindset where they're solving their own problems, because soon you're not going to be there.
No.
And trust me, when they're 30, you don't want to be solving their problems. And I often say, well, does it fit? You know, when a child brings a problem to me, it's like, does it fit with what you want?
Right.
And so letting go, it's hard because we're attached, right? But I love Ariana Grande's song, Thank You Next. When I first heard it, I'm like, oh, this is just about all of her relationships. But then as I thought about it, I'm like, it's mental health. It's being grateful for what happened and then looking forward. So it's thank you. And for her, it's her relationships. And if you listen to the song, it's about she wants to find that person, get married, have a family, a life. So it's thank you next. And so
not hanging on to what's not working.
And not hanging on to what's not going to happen.
Right?
If you hung on to Chloe when she was 7, or maybe better when she was 9, and this amazing attachment, and you are an amazing mother. I mean, for 15 years, every night you read to her, right? I mean,
well,
you
I
guys
was 15. She sort of stopped that when she was 12, but
well, it seemed to me for a long time. I mean, every night you'd spend an hour or so reading to her. So she already has you in her head. I know if I gave her a multiple choice question, Mom would like this decision. She'd be neutral on it. She would be sad. She would be furious. That 98 times out of 100, she knows what you think, right? Your voice is already in her head.
Yeah, and it's important for her to learn to listen to her voice, not just mine.
And so when your kids come to you with a problem, odds are they know your voice. You want to help them find their voice. So what did you learn today? Helping people find their voice. That'd be awesome. Write it down, take a picture of it, post it on any of your social media sites, #BrainWarriorsWay podcast. And we would just dearly love if you left us a comment, question, or review. We're going to read questions coming up this week. But before we do that, we're going to do Brain in the News next. Stay with us. Welcome back. We're talking about letting go, the brain, attachment, and letting go. But this week, we're going to talk about Brain in the News. There are a couple of big studies in the news. One is just horrifying.
Yeah.
You have a review.
I have a review first, and this is Cognitive Conclusions. I think you are an amazing human being. Love your podcast. I feel so late to have just found this. I have seen some of your stuff online and just love your approach to mental health overall. Big advocate for mental health. You're probably one of the few psychiatrists I actually respect. I'll be listening from now on. Keep blessing people with your gifts and genuine concern for others and their overall health, which is mostly mental.
Love that.
Love it.
All right, bring in the news. What's going on in the news? Study yesterday. Erectile dysfunction, 6 times more likely for men who've been infected with COVID.
Ouch.
Oh my goodness. It causes inflammation. Inflammation can make your blood vessels less pliable, less responsive, and that can impact your relationship. I mean, a lot of people get nervous when you talk about sex, but there's one study actually from Harvard that showed 40% of 40-year-old men had erectile dysfunction at some point. It's horrifying. 70% of 70-year-old men.
Wow.
And now, if you've been infected with COVID, those numbers even go higher. And often we know COVID has more negative consequences for people who are unhealthy. If they're overweight or hypertensive or have diabetes. And we have often said your best defense against COVID is your own immune system. There's a new study out on people have long haulers that if they get the vaccine, it actually helps a number of people with it. I'm not exactly sure why.
That's interesting.
But maybe it's an extra boost to their immune system to fight the virus that sort of sticks around too long. But, you know, a lot of people get Lyme disease and don't have chronic Lyme.
Right.
But there clearly is a group that have Lyme disease that end up.
Well, I find it so interesting that COVID actually causes brain inflammation. I mean, it crosses that blood-brain barrier. I just find that really fascinating. I think we just don't know everything yet.
Well, I have about 50 COVID scans, and actually a number of them with before and after scans. We got them before and then later. And it's not good news. It increases activity in the limbic or the emotional part of the brain. There was a new study also out this week from the journal Lancet, where they looked at medical records of millions of people, and they found 280-some thousand who had COVID. And then they looked at new diagnoses of mental health conditions and compared them to new diagnoses of people who had the flu, and significant increases: anxiety, depression, insomnia, psychosis, which is horrifying, dementia, Parkinson's disease.
Parkinson's?
Yeah. That COVID can impact your brain.
Yeah.
And so
I mean, that we know.
Doing what you can to avoid it, if you can, right? Masks, wash your hands, physical distancing, not social distancing. Socially, we want to be more connected. I think that was one of the big mistakes early in the pandemic, is we want to be physically distancing so the virus doesn't jump from me to you, but we want to be socially more connected than ever before. But we're going to find this virus, like a number of other viruses, Epstein-Barr, for example, or herpes, can cross the blood-brain barrier and can wreak havoc. And I don't really want to say on your mental health, because it's your brain health, because your brain creates your mind. There's another study out recently, the increased risk of traumatic brain injuries among parents and children who have attention deficit disorder. And I've known this for a long time because of the level of impulsivity that you might not think before you run in the street. One of my daughters was hyperactive from before birth. She just had no fear.
That's like her own child now, who terrifies me when she comes over here. Terrifies me.
Yeah, she's a bit better.
She's so cute, but I mean, I'm terrified.
Because there's no...
No, she literally doesn't even hesitate. She just runs straight into the pool. Like I do, when no one's standing there. Scary as heck.
So the study that was published, children with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder are vulnerable to traumatic brain injuries. They experience undesirable impacts more frequently than children without. And this was actually a study from Taiwan. And people who have untreated ADD have a higher incidence of almost every bad thing.
That's what I was just going to ask. I wonder what the rate is of kids who do experience things like drownings, or you wonder how many of them had ADD or ADHD,
or get into
medications and
or guns.
Because I have a child who borders OCD. She has a very, very busy brain. I mean, we've always had to like give her supplements to sort of calm her down, but she's the opposite, terrified of almost everything, which I'm okay with. I'm not going to say I hate that, but I wonder, because I see her versus her friends, some of who are extremely impulsive and they get into trouble. And I wonder how much of that has to do with ADHD.
Well, it has to do with brain function for sure. And your brain type. You can actually find your brain type at brainhealthassessment.com. But people who are type 2, our ADD group, they're spontaneous, they're impulsive.
And not all of them
often don't think about the consequences. Most of them that are just type 2.
Oh, just type 2. Okay.
There's 16 types. If you're anxious and cautious, that's you.
Right.
Then
you can have that ADD, but you're more
thoughtful.
like, right.
Then you're more thoughtful and more afraid. And what we often say is some anxiety is important.
Right.
And they tend to have lower cortisol levels.
Oh, interesting.
And lower heart rates, lower frontal lobe function, which means they don't have appropriate fear.
Mm-hmm.
And so I used to think, being a psychiatrist, my job was to lower people's anxiety.
Not necessarily.
And it's like, not for everybody. Mm-hmm. Some people need to really raise their anxiety. So where's your anxiety at today? Do you have enough where you're being really thoughtful about the pandemic and COVID and your health?
Or do you have too much? Is it paralyzing you?
Or does it paralyze you? And what are the ways to balance it? Mm-hmm. We don't want you to believe every stupid thought you have, which is why I collect anteaters. They're going to become a big part of the future. But you also don't want to have positive pie in the sky, happy thoughts that aren't rational.
Right.
That you want to have appropriate fear. So it's really the balance between enough anxiety, you make the right decisions, but not too much anxiety that you feel frozen.
Right. So that's Brain in the News for this week. And please post what you've learned, tag someone, tag us. We'd love to hear from you, and send us a review. We would love to get a review from you. And if we read your review, it enters you into a drawing to win one of our books, either Daniel's book, Your Brain is Always Listening, or my book, The Relentless Courage of a Scared Child. And we will be back with your questions. Welcome back. We've been talking about letting go in this week's episodes, but today we're going to be answering your questions. We would love to hear from you. If you learn anything, please post it, tag us, tag someone else that you think would benefit from this, and leave us a review. We love to hear from you guys. So if you leave us a review, we will enter you into a drawing to win one of our books. Either Your Brain is Always Listening. I love that book that you just wrote, or my new book, The Relentless Courage of a Scared Child. But you have a review.
I do. J&S Hillman. Wonderful. This podcast has been wonderful. I've only been listening for a short time, only because I just found it, but I fully intend to binge it. I've been struggling for years. Now I'm trying to find a way to make a scan happen for me. I bought the cookbook.
Awesome.
And just started reading Your Brain is Always Listening. I came across Daniel and Tana Amen listening to Robin McGraw's I've Got a Secret. Thank you, Robin. I'm trying the Happy Saffron now. I'm hoping with this and work on my part, I can clear the 10 plus years of brain fog. As my grandmother would say, thank you, thank you, thank you.
I would actually love to hear back from you and see how it's working. I want to know what's going on with your brain fog after you use the program for a few months, because that's our experience. We've actually studied the outcomes on our 6-month class. And one of the biggest results was that people had more clarity and more focus.
Well, and I know when we have guests, we often don't have a chance to get to people's questions, but now we do.
Now we do.
First question. What's your favorite healthy snack to eat on the go?
Okay, so I want to start by saying not the same program is great for everybody. So some people want more healthy carbs. I tend to go high fat, low carb. So I love coconut wraps. Coconut wraps are, Pure Wraps makes a great coconut wrap. They make curry flavor and plain flavor. I will put sometimes some nut butter on them, or I'll use some salmon or tuna or leftover chicken that we have. Love that with avocado. That's like a quick snack that I can make. Nuts are always a good snack. I do like a lot of greens, even though I'm low carb. I don't include greens in that because they're high fiber and they don't have sugar in them. So lots of greens, and I will sometimes dip those into avocado or something like that. So those types of snacks are my favorite snacks. High fat, low carb.
Well, mine.
High fiber.
I actually make mine. Brain and Love bars.
Yeah.
It's brain healthy chocolate.
So
chocolate is a super favorite.
And your my other one is your hot chocolate that you make me every night. So much fun. I love that.
So
it's like so comforting.
Costco, organic, vanilla, unsweetened almond milk, heaping teaspoon of raw cacao.
Yep.
Organic raw cacao, and some chocolate stevia from Sweet Leaf. Mix it up. Tastes amazing.
And I turn it into a keto snack by adding some MCT oil or some ghee or grass-fed butter to it. And you don't want the calories, but for me, believe it or not, it's just my metabolic makeup is as long as I'm having really healthy calories and I'm eating a high-fat diet, low-carb diet, I tend to lean out and have way more energy and focus. But that's because my brain type is I tend to be a little foggy when I eat carbs. So.
And if you're an OCD person,
like my daughter.
What are healthy snacks for them?
So she tends to eat like a lot of different types of veggies with hummus is one of her go-to snacks. Another one that we both like actually is a basil spread on those coconut wraps that I talked about with like chicken, but she will add some sort of like a carb to it, some sort of veggie to it that's more carbohydrate based. She'll eat sweet
like
potatoes. Carrots or something like that. I skip that.
Butternut squash.
Right. So those, and she'll often have like sliced apples with almond butter, those types of things. I tend to avoid most fruit with the exception of like berries, and occasionally I'll have things like apples.
Are there certain ages at which a body's metabolism slows down?
Oh, yes. Oh my gosh. My biggest frustration. I was always like, so proud of myself because I thought I had trained my metabolism because I had a really, really high metabolism all the way up until like the last year and a half. And I was like, oh, I'm going to be this way forever.
You mean until you turn 50?
Until I went into menopause. Yeah. Until I started menopause. And I'm so frustrated now because now I actually have to pay attention. I used to be able to eat so much because I worked out And I ate healthy food, but I would eat so much and never really paid attention to it. And I was lean, like really lean. And now I'm like, what is happening? Like I actually have to pay attention. So menopause is a big time for women. After a baby, that can actually, but breastfeeding will help you. So after a baby, that can be a big time. But middle age, like that's the time.
For men, it could actually be in their later 30s.
Well, and they also, when their wives get pregnant, will tend to, they gain sympathy pounds. Yeah.
I never noticed that.
Oh, no, it's true.
I just noticed that when I was a teenager, I worked out a lot. I could eat anything I wanted.
Yeah.
It's sort of Chloe's boyfriend can eat anything he wants, and he's skinny as a rail. And I know that's not going to last for him. And so if you have bad habits, they tend to persist until you like go, what happened?
Yeah. And it wasn't just, it's not just when you hit a certain age, your hormones shift. That's why. It's because your hormones change. And so like when you hit menopause or middle age, even for men, when your testosterone drops, it's going to change you. So when I hit that menopausal age, what happened was not only do I have to pay more attention now to not put weight on, but my muscles got softer. And so I have to work harder now to have, because you want some muscle mass because it makes you more sensitive to insulin. It keeps you stronger so you don't get hurt. Like there's lots of good reasons.
Well, and another time in life is whenever you're under chronic stress.
Yes,
and
cortisol goes
so
up.
There's a new study out on what happened in different age groups for weight during the pandemic.
Yeah.
40% of people gained weight.
Right.
Significant amounts of weight. In fact, it was the youngest.
Right, because they were so stressed.
Older teenagers and younger adults that for people who gained weight, their average weight gain was 41 pounds.
That's insane.
Was crazy. For older people like me, our weight gain wasn't much, but it's just really.
But cortisol is a killer. So stress is a killer.
Because that's going to have a negative impact on their body, probably for the rest of their lives.
Yeah.
We know people who are overweight in midlife actually have a higher incidence of dementia because being overweight is a risk factor for dementia midlife, not when you're older, because a lot of people have actually died off. And frailty is more a risk factor for dementia in the elderly.
Yeah, absolutely. So to finish that off, so when I was younger and, for a lot of people who have a high metabolism, you can eat more healthy carbs. You get to a certain place in life, whether it's chronic stress, whether it's your hormones shifting. So you get to your 50s or late 40s and your hormones shift. That's when, for me, going low carb, high fiber, but low carb, and higher fat, higher protein really helped me get back on track.
We should spend more time
on food.
About food.
Yeah, because it's a big thing in our house.
Brain healthy.
Yeah.
Foods, and then food pushers and food sabotagers.
Yeah.
It's hard.
Yeah.
Food is hard.
Or it's great. It just depends.
Are there common areas of weight gain in men and women's bodies as they age? And, I often say that I dearly hope many of the overweight men will deliver the baby because it's belly fat.
Belly fat's the worst.
And that's the worst because it changes hormonal patterns.
It makes them produce the wrong kind of estrogen.
And it turns healthy testosterone into estrone, which is the cancer promoting form of estrogen. Can drastic, quick weight loss have a negative effect on my health?
So drastic, quick weight loss, yes and no. It depends on how much you lose and how fast. But the problem with drastic, quick weight loss is that you tend to not keep it off, especially if you don't really, if your goals around it aren't really, really clear and you don't have really solid habits. You don't have really planted habits in how you're doing it. So you want to really watch. We actually prefer that someone actually have a really good plan and they're not starving themselves. They're not doing, crazy calorie restriction, that you cut your calories, but you cut them in a really rational way and you're eating really healthy food because we want you on a program that you can sustain forever.
I think that's so important that losing weight in a sustainable way that keeps you in the right habits over time is way more important
Way more
than losing weight quickly.
But the one thing I want to say about that, some people will lose weight really fast naturally, even if they're just eating a really healthy program, because especially in the beginning, they'll drop a ton of weight because inflammation comes down fast. If you've been eating really poorly and you're really overweight, you probably have a lot of inflammation. That weight will come down really quick as you drop that inflammation. Then it will usually stabilize. So it's not always because you just dropped a ton of fat. It's sometimes, and that's good. To get rid of the inflammation is a good thing. So just to clarify that.
Right. And people on our program, when we did the Brain Warriors Way, I think our highest weight loss was 56 pounds that they lost in 6 months.
Yeah.
I mean, that was.
But I've worked with people who have lost 103 pounds, but she did it over a year. And so it was rational.
Yeah. That's a great story.
Yeah.
So you can do this. One more question, and then we have to stop. Does it matter how often you eat fish?
So it really depends on the type of fish. So we really like a website called seafoodwatch.org because they will talk about the best type of fish and when to eat it and which fish to avoid based on what's going on in the world. Like if there have been oil spills or what's happening. There's so many factors that go into it. So we really like that website. So smaller fish are better than big fish. So that's a complicated question as far as, does it matter how much fish? It really matters what kind of fish and where they're from.
How it's raised.
And the fact that all fish should be wild is not true. So there are some fish that are better off in responsible, sustainably raised environments because if they're doing it well.
And so think of it at least once a week because
minimum.
Research shows that you actually have more gray matter in your brain if you're eating grilled or baked fish. So this is not fried fish, grilled or baked fish at least once a week.
But some of our friends like Tony Robbins, because he was a pescatarian, was eating, and he's a big guy, was eating lots of fish every day, like lunch and dinner, and he ended up with high levels of mercury. So you do want to be, I think the really important thing,
eating
swordfish, right? So big fish so get tested. Make sure you're being tested.
Well, we're so grateful for you. Leave us your comments, questions, or reviews, brainwarriorswaypodcast.com. And we have a very special week for you coming up. Stay with us.
If you're enjoying the Brain Warriors Way podcast, please don't forget to subscribe so you'll always know when there's a new episode. And while you're at it, feel free to give us a review or 5-star rating, as that helps others find the podcast.
If you're interested in coming to Amen Clinics, use the code PODCAST10 to get a 10% discount on a full evaluation at amenclinics.com. For more information, give us a call at 855-978-1363.